you're going to be excited to hear that we're going to talk about the locating bush for pivot, which Rover rather dryly calls it. To put it another way, a problem that afflicts many an old driver of a P5 Coupe, floppy quarter lights. So, ignore the stuff over here, that's for another video. What we're talking about today is these things, which Rover call the locating bush for pivot. These basically hold the quarter light open. On my car, as you saw at the start, when I open the quarter light, it doesn't stay in position, it just flops around, and that's no good to anyone. What I've found is that, and the reason actually I took the door apart from my car, I mean, it was only about a year ago that I rebuilt the bloody thing, next video I'll be talking about the door lock, because the door lock on my car was playing up, the door wouldn't shut properly, and while I'd got the door in pieces again, I thought, well, let's have a look at trying to sort out the quarter lights. So this is a broken locating bush for pivot, as Rover call it. This is the thing that holds the quarter light in position. You'll see it's kind of serrated or ridged, and those ridges are the kind of positions that hold the quarter light open. That's actually the one that was out of my car. As you can see, you may be able to see it's broken. It should look like that. This is one that I managed to buy on eBay. Basically both of my car, they were both broken, both sides, so I think it's probably quite a common problem for P5 coupes. So I managed to find this one on eBay, not cheap at all, but I've never seen one come up before. I bought it a year or two ago, and luckily managed to hang on to it. So that's what it should look like. What I hadn't realised, and there's no part numbers moulded on these as they come from Rover or came from Rover. These are handed, and it kind of makes sense. Obviously the quarter lights open in different 180 degree different directions, and this is actually the left hand one, which is no good to me because I was doing the right hand door, driver's door. So what I'll talk about a little bit in a minute is 3D printing. So it's something that I've kind of got into fairly recently. Always been interested in it, and kind of read about it, and I finally decided to buy a 3D printer, which is where this comes in. So what you can see here is a series of kind of prototypes. I basically took that and recreated it in a CAD program, and these are different iterations of that, basically 3D printed. They look slightly different. There are actually, all of them are slightly different in terms of dimensions. These four on this side are actually printed in something called PLA, which is I can't remember what that stands for, but it's a filament that you use in 3D printing. It's basically the default filament to use, very easy to print with. However, it's not very strong, and I believe the originals were molded in nylon. So this is, I think, nylon. Looks like nylon, feels like nylon. As far as I can tell, it's nylon. So these less clean looking ones are printed in nylon. Not all printers can print nylon. It has a higher melting point than a lot of printers can handle, but my printer can print nylon, and so these are printed in PA6 nylon, which is the strongest nylon you can get. However, nylon is difficult to print with. It's not as clean. I didn't realize nylon actually absorbs a lot of water, and that's a problem, because when you heat it up in the printer to extrude, to print, the water basically vaporizes, and you get bubbles, pops and bubbles, which messes up the print. So some of these are cleaner than others. These are actually the final design that I am using, and these look slightly different shape-wise. It's really just the base that's different, and the main reason they're that shape versus that shape is just because it makes it easier to print. Without getting into the detail of 3D printing, one of the complexities is that you're extruding melted plastic through a very fine nozzle, and obviously it needs to set in place and not sag, but you also need to get it hot enough so that it fuses to the layer below. So when you're printing things that are unsupported, you have to print supports. So that's what these two are. These have the supports in place, you can see down here, and you basically just snap these off. But that's printed like that on the bed of the printer, and that's got the supports in place, that's got the supports removed, and so it's just easier to print that shape than that shape. Makes no difference at all to the functionality of the print. It's basically just a cleaner print. It's quite messy on the bottom there where the support was holding it. So this shape minimizes support anyway. Let's not get into the detail of 3D printing. Happy to do that if anyone's interested, but it's not what this video is about. So this locating bush for pivot, which in the parts catalogue, from what I can see, it's that item there, number 21 on page 312. Well, it's actually 21. Locating bush for pivot, bottom right hand, locating bush for pivot, bottom left hand. Part number 359202 and 359203. So they're different left and right. And from what I can see, actually, these are unique to the coupe. I don't believe the parts catalogue doesn't really show the saloon quarterlight in any detail. So it doesn't look like it uses these locating bushes. So maybe the saloon doesn't have this problem of these breaking. But certainly on my car, both of these are broken, both sides. So the quarterlight just doesn't hold in position. And what's failing or failed on both sides is these columns have snapped off. So part of the reason for there being so many prototypes, I've tried to make these 3D printed ones as strong as possible. So I've increased the diameter of these sticky uppy things, and I've also put, you may not be able to see it, but I've chamfered the edge. I don't know what you'd call it. Anyway, I've radiused the bottom to try and support the bottom a little bit more than the originals, and literally I cannot break these printed versions. They seem incredibly strong. So one of the things I learned, just to mention, with 3D printing, so it builds the print up in layers. So actually the direction you have the item, or the direction that you print the item, affects the strength. If originally these first ones I printed that way up, so they were being built up in layers, and this was a real weak point. I won't break this. I could break this quite easily in PLA, because the layers don't fuse as strongly as a continuous bead of the material, the plastic. So hence these ones, and I'm actually printing these on the side like that, or well, actually like that, as you saw, because then the bead of molten plastic is running up into these arms, so it makes this much stronger. Even with nylon, I could break the originals with my hand when I printed them that way. Doing it this way, incredibly strong. So as I say, it's nylon 6. I believe it's the strongest nylon you can get. You can also get like a PA12 and various other types of nylon, but nylon 6 is the strongest, and so that's what I'm using. So I'm going to fit these to my car, well, the right hand one anyway. I've also very handily put an R and an L on the ones I'm printing, and if anyone's interested, I'm going to sell these on the website roverp5.com. They are not cheap because I'll show you a video, a time lapse of these being printed, but each one takes nearly 3 hours to print. That's partly down to the resolution that I'm using to get as much detail as possible, but also nylon, you tend to print slightly slower with nylon. So yeah, each one of those takes almost 3 hours to print, so not quick, and they then need some tidying up as well, just to get them ready. So I'm going to sell them. They'll be on the website in the next few days, and if anyone wants one of these, I'm happy to sell you one through the website. I'd be interested to know on the saloon actually whether there's any equivalent. As I say, the parts catalogue doesn't show it, but you know, I am open to, if someone has a plastic part that they need recreating, I'm open to creating it and printing it, and doing that for you if you want. As I say, you know, if the saloons have some sort of equivalent of this that's just not shown in the parts catalogue, then get in touch. But these are coupe specific. I believe all versions of the coupe, you know, from the very first one through to the P5B, used these. So they're handed. I've got left and right. They're basically mirror images, and the way that these work in the car. This is a pencil with a matchstick through it. It's easier than showing you the door. This is the pivot. If you imagine you're looking down on the door, this is the pivot for the quarterlight. So when you open the quarterlight, this rotates. And this bush, just make sure I've got the right hand one, yeah. This bush goes inside the door and is pushed up with a spring. There's a spring here and a nut on the end, so this is all held on the pivot for the quarterlight, and these two pins push up into two holes in the door, so this is held in place, and then as the quarterlight pivots or you open it, it rotates. The quarterlight has a pin through it, so the shaft has a pin through it, and that's what these ridges are for. So approximately when the quarterlight is closed, the pin is in line with the side of the car, so it's facing along the axis of the car. When you open the quarterlight, it drops into the first ridge, and that's open, I think, about that much. You push it, and because this is spring loaded, this can move down, this bush can move down slightly on the spring into the next position, and then into the final position. So there are basically three positions that the quarterlight should move in. This final position has a stop to stop you going any further, and the quarterlight is just a little bit more than 90 degrees to the axis of the car at that point, and then you go back. This is the left hand one, so that's quarterlight closed, then that's the first position open, second position open, and then third position open. So that's the left hand quarterlight. So yeah, these are available on the website. They may be of use, I don't know, maybe my car's unique in having these broken on both sides. It's not exactly a major thing, but it's a nice thing to get right. And these are, as I say, they work in exactly the same way. I've tried to make them a little bit stronger, but they are printed in PA6 nylon. it'll, you know, I can't imagine these are going to break, given the use that the cars will get. They should be as strong, if not stronger, than the original. So I'm going to fit one of these to the car, and we'll have a look at that. So actually, just before we get to the car, I'll show the printer itself. So this is a Creality Ender 3 S1 Pro, which is a bit of a mouthful, but you can see inside this is an enclosure for the printer itself. I'll show you a time lapse of this in action, but that's the 3D printer. So this is the bed where the printer works. You can just see on there there's one of the items that I've just printed, and then this is the nylon filament, and this is the extruder here. So yeah, it's a really interesting thing to be able to make plastic parts. You can even get into making metal parts using sintered filaments, or filaments that you sinter, but that's a bit advanced for me at the moment. I think I'll stick with plastic. You can get all sorts of different plastics. I've got ABS, PLA is the easiest. You can even get some filaments that have like wood inside them, wood shade or wood dust inside them, so they almost look like wood. You can get TPU, which is a very soft rubber-like filament as well. So you can pretty much, you know, there's dozens of different types of filaments you can get, different plastics, and you can almost print anything. You know, one of the limitations with this, well, not a limitation, well, it is a limitation, is that the size of the item. I think this will print 220mm by 220mm by 270mm high. That's plenty big enough for pretty much everything I want to print. So enough about 3D printing. Happy to go into more detail if anyone's interested, or if you've got any questions, then just ask in the comments. But let's get to fitting one of these into the car. Okay, so we are back at the car, back where we were about a year ago, on the front door, unfortunately. But so I'm going to fit the Quarterlight pivot bush, or whatever it's called. So this is a front door of the coupe. If you look in here, you will see this rod here, which is the pivot for the Quarterlight, the lower pivot. The bush will go on there, and there's a spring and a couple of washers and a nut that goes on the bottom. I think it might have been, yeah, a lock nut. So I'm going to reassemble this. You can see at the moment, you know, as you saw at the start, the Quarterlight just flaps around, it won't stay in position, so that's no good. So let's get to fitting the bush. Okay, so I've just put some light in there so you can see a bit better. This is the lower rod or spindle or pivot for the Quarterlight. There's a lot of wax oil inside the door. It's not all rust, some of it is, but not all of it. So let's get to it. So I will try to keep some light where we are. Okay, so this is what came off originally. This is the spring. There are a couple of washers that go on as well, and then there's a lock nut which is in two parts. so it's just a matter, it should just be a simple matter of reassembling all that back on the pivot. So first thing that goes on is the bush, so that just pushes up, and then there are two holes at the top of the door that the two pins locate into. You can actually just about see them. Hang on, I'll just move you. Okay, so this is the looking down the top of the door with the wood trim off. You can just see in there the two white ends of the bush as I push them through the holes in the door. See them come through there. So they're really quite snug. I made these slightly thicker than the originals, only a fraction of a millimetre, but tried to make it as snug as possible in those holes. So now it's just a matter of getting the spring and the locking nut back on. Try and do this without blocking the view too much. So the first thing that goes on is one of the washers, I guess to spread the load of the spring on that bushing, and then the spring goes on, and then the other washer, and then get one of the actually what I'm going to do is let that stay there. I'm just going to put some copper slip on that thread. Okay, so got the spring and the first washer, and then second washer and first part of the lock nut. So what I'll do, before I won't show you fiddling doing the lock nut up, but just try and get this started, and then we'll test the Quarterlight. It's pretty simple to fit once you've got the door trim off. Just fiddle getting this nut back on. Okay, so that, I don't know whether you can see, just about as the Quarterlight opens, that bushing pushes down and that pin locates in that. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then shut. So might want a little bit more tension than that, but it's not far off. Okay, I think that's it. So I'm just going to put the lock nut on. I won't show you that because it's going to be a fiddle, but that's basically it. Okay, so that's all fitted and I've tightened up the lock nut. So just to show it in action, that's the first position. It will basically spring to that without much effort. This is the second position, and then that's the third position, and that's
probably a little bit over 90 degrees to the side of the car, so that's going to scoop a lot of air in. So seems very positive, seems to work really nicely, and yeah, just a nice little thing that when I bought the car I hadn't actually realised that this was how they were meant to operate. So just as you know, I kind of quite like getting these little things working on the car. Find it part of the interest. So the fact I could combine that with 3D printing was just a nice thing. So that's basically it for now. I originally took the door apart because the door wasn't shutting very well. Sometimes it shut really nicely, barely any pressure needed, and then other times it would just spring back open. Not the seals. I know, a lot of people probably think, oh, it's the new seals fitted, but that's not the case, because sometimes it would shut really well. Actually, what I found was that the door lock mechanism had worn, so the rotating part of the lock that latches the door shut was had worn, and so it was loose on the bushing. There's a nylon bushing in there, strange coincidence, another nylon item that's broken or worn. So yeah, there's quite a small, or a very thin walled nylon bush that the lock rotates on. I guess the driver's one is the one that's going to wear first, that gets the most use, and so the kind of rotating lock spindle was moving around. There was something else as well, which I'll show you in the next video, that was broken. So that's why I took the door apart. Didn't actually take it apart to fix this, but I found the original bushing that I'd bought on eBay a couple of years ago. I found that and thought, oh, I should fit that, and then that kind of spiraled into realizing I got the wrong side, and so printing my own. So yeah, if you do want one of these bushings, then go to the website. They'll be on there by the time this video goes out. They won't be very cheap because they do take some time to make, but I'm happy, if anyone does want one side or both sides, then I'm happy to provide them. And so I'm going to be using them as well on my car. So yeah, just go to roverp5.com, the shop, and they'll be there. So that's it for now. Next video shouldn't be another 6 months or however long it was since the last one. Should be fairly quick, and I will show what I'm doing on the door lock and rebuilding that. Then I'll get this door rebuilt. Won't show that because it's going to be a repeat of what I did last year, only hopefully quicker. But then basically I can turn the car around then and do the other side. So progress has been a bit slow over the last few months. Been decorating the house and yeah, lots of other stuff going on. So I've been doing bits, but not really enough to make much of a video. But I do still want to keep making videos, and yeah, hopefully this may have been useful to someone. All right, see you next time. Bye.